Welcome to the NPC Energy Podcast. Is reality just one big simulation? Could The Matrix actually have been a documentary?
Hey, yeah, those are the big questions, aren't they? They definitely keep us digging.
Right. And today, we're on another simulated journey. This one gets really interesting. Are mirrors actually portals?
Yeah, the anonymous sources you pulled together for this one are pretty compelling. The idea that something so everyday, like a mirror, could be, well, more than it seems. It really taps into old myths, but also some, surprisingly modern ideas.
Okay. Portals. I know that sounds maybe a bit much for some folks right off the bat. So let's start with why these anonymous sources think our reflections might be acting sus, as they put it. What theories are out there?
Well, one of the really fascinating ones from the sources connects to quantum physics, quantum superposition, actually, and this idea that our consciousness might have a tiny, tiny lag syncing up with our reflection.
A lag, like a delay.
Exactly. The theory goes that, at a quantum level, you might exist in multiple, slightly different states or timelines simultaneously. Our brain sorts it out so we feel like one continuous self, but maybe the reflection takes a microsecond longer to catch up.
Oh.
So most of the time, you'd never notice. But maybe, just maybe, that tiny lag could explain those weird moments where your reflection seems off or does something slightly different. The source even joked it's like a version of you with minor patch updates.
Patch updates for my reflection? That is a wild thought. But okay, the sources also looked at much older stuff too, right? Left quantum, more, well, kind of spooky.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you look back, mirrors have always had this mystical vibe. The sources point out these old esoteric beliefs, like mirrors being called the eyes of the spirit world in some ancient lore.
Mm-hmm.
So this idea of them being a threshold or a way to see something else, it's been around for ages across lots of cultures. It's like this deep intuition that they're not just passive glass.
And there are specific traditions too, aren't there? Like the whole breaking a mirror thing. Bad luck.
Yeah, exactly. The sources mention the Chinese tradition specifically. 7 years of bad luck if you break one.
Right.
And the reason they give is pretty intense. The belief was that a mirror actually held a fragment of your soul, a soul fragment. And it supposedly took 7 years for that piece to regenerate.
Wow. A soul fragment. That's heavy.
It really shows how deeply connected people felt to their reflections, doesn't it? Like it was a real part of them that could be harmed. Kind of like old animistic ideas, The self-extending into objects.
And it wasn't just bad luck, was it? There's that Russian thing too about covering mirrors when someone passes away.
Mm-hmm. The sources cover that too. The idea there was to prevent the soul of the person who died from getting trapped on the wrong side of the mirror.
The wrong side. Creepy.
Yeah. Again, it paints the mirror as this boundary. Liminal space. It's weird how these old fears kind of linger in the background, even if we don't consciously believe them, Makes you wonder about our gut feelings about reflections.
Which kind of leads into the third theory from the sources, the mirror test.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I know that's a thing in science, right? For animals.
Exactly. The mirror test is basically used to see if an animal can recognize itself, self-awareness.
Okay.
But these anonymous sources, they put a really clever spin on it. They ask, what if we're the ones being tested?
Oh. How so?
Like maybe when we look in the mirror, we're subconsciously checking, are we rendered properly? Are we still synced up with the simulation, so to speak?
Rendered properly.
Yeah.
Okay, that definitely fits the NPC energy vibe.
Right. Is that why we stare at ourselves sometimes? Not just vanity, but this weird need to confirm we're coherent. The source even suggests the mirror might not just be showing us, but actively, scanning us.
Scanning us. Okay, that flips the whole idea of looking in the mirror. What if it's looking back?
It really does flip it. Maybe our self-awareness is tied to this constant need to just check the image, make sure it's right.
So, with all these weird theories,
Yeah.
did anyone try to, test it? Like, poke the simulation?
Well, funny you should ask. That brings us right to the NPC Mirror Experiment that was detailed in the anonymous sources.
Ooh, okay, you got to tell me about this. What was the experiment?
All right, so this is where the sources really embrace the playful, speculative side of things. The setup was 3:33 a.m.
Of course. Prime glitch hour.
Exactly. One mirror, one candle, dark room, pretty standard, spooky setup. And the person doing it whispered a phrase into the mirror, "Show me what I've forgotten."
Whoa. Okay, that alone gives me chills. What happened? Did anything happen?
According to the sources.
Yeah.
Yeah. They reported some pretty weird stuff. The reflection supposedly blinked, but not at the same time as the person. asynchronously.
No way.
And it also tilted its head, but slightly slower than the person did, like it was thinking or processing the request.
Okay, that's unsettling. Anything else?
Yeah, one more thing. They apparently saw a flicker of light, like in the corner of the mirror's view that wasn't actually there in the room. No reflection source for it.
A phantom flicker. That's exactly the kind of subtle weirdness that makes you doubt your eyes. So why do this? What was the point of this spooky ritual?
The sources stress that the goal wasn't just to stare, but to try and actively move the interaction, to see if the mirror was more than just glass and silvering.
Like trying to prompt a response.
Sort of, yeah. An attempt at active engagement, not just passive looking, trying to push the boundary of what a reflection is supposed to do. And the results, even if they're just stories, they do make you think about how reflections are even, like, generated, which actually links up nicely with how mirrors work in video games.
Ah, yeah. The sources brought that up too, the tech side. I actually found that super interesting, comparing reality to game code.
It's a great analogy, isn't it? Because, as the sources point out, getting mirrors right in 3D games is notoriously difficult. It's really hard on the computer.
Why is that?
Well, basically, to show an accurate reflection, the game engine has to draw the entire scene again, but from the mirror's perspective. It essentially doubles the scene.
Ah, okay. So it takes double the processing power.
Pretty much, yeah. Which really hits performance, especially on older consoles or PCs. That's why often developers would use tricks, like static images that kind of look like reflections but didn't really change.
Right. Or they just wouldn't have reflections at all in older games. I remember that. Or they looked really fake.
Exactly. And the sources use this to ask a really sharp question. If our reality is some kind of super optimized simulation, why would NPCs, non-player characters, even need reflections?
Good point.
Their existence is usually just about interacting with the main player, right? Rendering complex reflections for them, reflections the player might not even notice. Seems like wasted resources, you know? Maybe an optimization clue left in the code.
So if you see a weird reflection in a game, it's often a glitch, a sign something's wrong under the hood. So the idea is, if our reflections act weird, maybe it's the same kind of thing, the sources suggest it could point to a flaw in our simulation, or maybe something hidden. They even gave that example from Max Payne 2.
Oh, yeah, the dream sequence. You shoot the mirror.
And it reveals stuff that isn't actually in the room. It's different behind the glass.
Super creepy scene.
Totally. So the big insight from the gaming analogy is making realistic reflections takes effort. So their presence, or maybe their occasional weirdness in our reality, might not be accidental. It could be a clue.
So the metaphor then is, what if we shoot our perception of mirrors? Not literally, obviously, but challenge how we see them. What's behind that glass?
It's a cool way to put it, yeah. Shooting our perception, challenging assumptions, looking deeper. The sources are hinting that maybe by engaging differently, we might uncover something usually hidden.
Okay, this is definitely getting deep. We've had quantum theories, ancient myths, experiments, game code, but then the sources took another turn, didn't they? Even more meta. What if? What if we're the reflection?
Yeah, that one's a real head spinner. It flips everything.
The idea is, like, maybe the image in the mirror is the realer reality, and this world we walk around in is the echo, the simulation, the reflection itself.
Okay.
It makes the mirror not a window out, but maybe a window back to where we're originally from, or a truer state. It really messes with your idea of what's real, doesn't it?
It really does. Have you ever, caught your reflection and it just seemed too aware? Like it knew something you didn't. The sources mentioned that feeling.
That uncanny feeling. It's pretty common, I think. Like the reflection is just watching, maybe judging, or like the sources suggest, maybe even trying to tell you something.
Tell you something. Like
move, or get out of this frame, or just wake up. Like it's seeing the limits of this reality that we're stuck in. Remember those moments where you catch your reflection doing something weird, like blinking when you didn't think you did? Maybe this theory is a way to think about that.
So if mirrors could be these exit notes, like the sources hinted, how do we actually use them? Beyond, checking if there's spinach in our teeth.
Right. How do we stop staring and actually move, as the sources put it? Well, they proposed this thing called the daily NPC debug ritual.
A debug ritual. Okay, I'm intrigued. What does it involve?
It sounds a bit like an urban legend, honestly, but okay. Dim light, stare into a mirror for about 2 minutes, no distractions. Then you whisper, "I know you're watching."
Okay. Intense.
And wait a beat.
Right.
Then break eye contact, but step backward without turning around. Keep watching the mirror out of the corner of your eye, basically.
To see what?
To see if you in the mirror turns first. Or, the sources say, a real sign of a glitch is if you see the reflection blink after you've already looked away.
Okay, that definitely sounds like internet creepypasta, but I'm also kind of tempted to try it now. Why this specific process?
I think the idea, reading between the lines of the sources, is just to shake up our normal automatic interaction with mirrors. Force yourself to observe it differently, more actively, while doing something slightly unnatural, like walking backwards. Makes you pay closer attention, maybe? It's shifting from just passively seeing to actively looking for anomalies.
And it's not just about the mirror ritual itself, is it? The sources talked about movement more broadly.
Exactly, yeah. That was a key point. It's less about the mirror physically being a portal, maybe, and more about breaking our own routines, our personal loops, as they called them.
Our NPC loops?
Kind of, like just doing something unexpected. Say something random in a conversation. Turn left when you always turn right. The idea is to disrupt your own predictable patterns.
So the mirror exercise is like a daily reminder to be less predictable.
That seems to be the takeaway from the sources. Stop just reflecting your usual behavior and start actively redirecting it. Become less predictable in the simulation.
Be the glitch, not the NPC.
Ah.
I like it. Okay, now the sources also had something called Glitchmail, right? Listener stories.
They did. They shared one specific example from a listener on Threads at Plasmalot.
Okay, what was their glitch?
Get this. They were brushing their teeth, looked in the mirror, and their reflection gave them this smug smirk.
A smirk. Seriously.
Apparently. And right after that, their toothpaste tube exploded.
No. Exploding toothpaste. Okay, that's hilarious and also really weird.
Right. The sources had fun with it, too. Called it a haunted oral care routine, or maybe just a classic mirror prank.
Yeah.
And they even suggested the listener should try and demand a side quest from the smirking reflection next time.
Demand a side quest. I love that. It keeps it playful, even when you're talking about potentially reality-shattering stuff.
Absolutely. You got to have a sense of humor and curiosity about this stuff, right? Whether it's a real glitch or just our brains being weird, the experiences themselves are fascinating.
Totally agree. Okay, so let's wrap up this simulated journey down the reflective rabbit hole.
Yeah.
What are the main takeaways for our listeners from these anonymous sources?
I think there are a few key ideas to chew on. First, maybe mirrors aren't just tools. Maybe they're more like terminals, interfaces, something interactive.
Mm-hmm.
Second, that feeling of just staring blankly into them. Maybe that's a sign we're stuck in a loop, like a program buffering.
Stuck in the buffer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that.
And third, if there is some kind of portal or hidden layer, maybe it opens up not when we stare harder, but when we act unpredictably, when we break the script.
So the next time you look in the mirror, maybe ask yourself that question the sources posed. Am I looking in or am I being looked out from? Kind of gives you the shivers, doesn't it?
It really does make you think differently. And that call to action from the sources is pretty direct. Stop staring. Start moving.
Yeah. Engage with reality. Don't just reflect it.
Exactly.
Smash the script. Become unrenderable. I love that. Well, this has been another simulated journey into the weird and wonderful on the NPC Energy Podcast. If you felt any glitches listening to this, maybe share, rate, or follow us. Just to prove you're human.
Until next time, keep questioning what you see. And hey, maybe whisper hello to your reflection. You never know.
Welcome to Glitch, baby.